Hello to all of you. We're getting ready to get started, and I would like to thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Marketing for Everyone. I'm Janet Nelson, the Director of Library Markets for Demco, and I will be moderating today's session. Before we get started, I just wanted to go through some housekeeping details, and then I'll introduce our speaker, and she'll get started with the presentation. On your screens, you should see a chat box on the right-hand side. If you have a question or are having any type of technical issue, please feel free to type something in there, and we'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as possible. We will pause in the middle of the presentation and at the end of the session for questions. If something comes up during the session that you'd like clarification on or want to respond to, I encourage you to type it in, and we'll be compiling all your thoughts and questions and can address those at the breaks. If we don't get to your question during the session, we'll be sure to get answers and post them with the recorded webcast after the event. There is also specific contact information available for Kathy or myself that you should see on the screen right now. After the session, you can feel free to email us directly if you have specific questions that we may be able to help with. We will be using Twitter as well, and the hashtag that we're using is hashtag DemcoIdeas. You should be able to see that hashtag on the side of your screen, in the chat box, and also on the main screen at the moment. That feed will be monitored as well for questions and comments. I believe that's all I have on housekeeping, so let's move on to introductions. As I mentioned, I'm Janet Nelson, the Director of the Library Markets for Demco, and I will be moderating today's session. Demco is always interested in how we can better serve the needs of our customers, and we have discovered that these webinars are a great way for us to do this. This topic is one that we have consistently seen discussed as an issue for libraries, and the Pew Research Report, Library Services in the Digital Age, supports a need by relating that most people using the library have a positive experience, but only about 22% feel that they really know all that their libraries have to offer. This obviously leaves a lot of room for improvement. Today's presentation is going to walk you through how everyone on your library staff is positioned to contribute to the marketing efforts of your library and what the impact of those efforts can be. I'm pleased to introduce you to Kathy Hakala-Ausperk, who will be our speaker today. Kathy is a library administrator, advocate, speaker, and trainer who believes the future of our libraries depends on our attitudes towards innovative service. She is currently the Executive Director of the Northeast Ohio Regional Library System and a 28-year public library veteran. She also serves as an adjunct faculty member of Kent State University's School of Library and Information Science and is the Principal Consultant for Libraries Thrive Consulting. As a frequent speaker at national and state conferences, staff days, and workshops, she has a passion for supporting, coaching, and developing successful libraries, staff members, and leaders. She has been a contributor and a guest editor for ALA Allied Professional Association's Library Work Life, and her book, Be a Great Boss, 1 Year to Success, was published in January 2011 by ALA Editions. Her newest book, Build a Great Team, is now also available through ALA Editions. Kathy, we're going to put the controls into your capable hands, and you can get started when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Janet, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. It's my pleasure to be with you today to talk about one of the things that's a most favorite for me, because it's one of the ways that I've seen staff have been able to get motivated and excited about contributing to the success of their library. So before we get started, I'm going to ask you to just take a quick poll. These are some of my, hold on a minute, let me get back to the first poll slide. Okay, here's the question for you. Just to get kind of a rough idea, how many people do you have who are involved with marketing at your library? And all you have to do is click in one of the buttons and give us an idea of your marketing staff. We're going to leave this poll up for just a few seconds, give everybody a chance to click in, just so we can get a rough idea of what we're looking at. I'd be surprised if there's a whole lot of people in this webinar today who have really large marketing staffs. I know some of the largest library systems I'm aware of still have usually about 2 or 3 people. So if you just give one click to what best matches your library, then Janet and the Demco folks are going to show us the results of this poll, and we'll see if we're all still pretty much following what's a traditional marketing staffing structure. Okay, well that looks like there's a lot of zeros. And then 1 and 2 and 3 are pretty common, and 22% of you have 4 or more. So that's pretty impressive to have that many people involved in marketing. Okay, let's go back to the slides. All right. One of the things we're going to talk about today is how we're not just looking at the traditional marketing model anymore in libraries. And there's a lot of ways that marketing comes across differently from what many of us are probably used to. I don't know about you, but back when I started in libraries in the 1980s, about the only marketing efforts we had, aside from an occasional newsletter, was the popular flyer. And this is a beautiful flyer. This is a great example of what we used to do. We, at least we, used clip art and programs like PFS First Choice and WordPerfect to create handouts that we could put around the library, various places that people could take with them. And I'm not trying to say that those weren't effective, but what amazes me now is that we used to think that that was enough. And now libraries have learned so much more about reaching their community and reaching their customers and involving their staff that we realize this is just one small part of what we have to do to tell our stories. Now, don't get me wrong, handouts are not out of fashion, and I'm not saying that at all. Every event that we have at my organization, people pick up our flyers like crazy, and they're still a really critical part. Those staff members that you hire in your marketing departments bring skills with them of design and communication that can help to make truly effective documents and flyers and the popular bookmarks that go out. That really is still important. But, as I said, what we're finding now in libraries is that we have to think about this as just one piece of the puzzle and not the entire process that we need to use. No matter what size staff you have, none of us can rely on a single person or 2 people or 3 people to do the marketing and the type of marketing that we have to do. Marketing is not just a person, it's a culture. And the most interesting way, and I think the most effective way to understand this, is to think of this as a culture that extends customer service. The way we do business, the way people interact with us, the way different customers touch and meet different members of our staff, all contribute to the overall marketing that we do. It's been said many times that your level of customer service is only as good as the worst interaction that somebody has with you. So when you think about that in a positive way, then your marketing efforts and the impression that you make on your public are going to be as great as the greatest interaction that somebody has. Another thing we have to remember as we look at marketing with this big picture view is that marketing is a two-way street. Marketing can't be just us telling people things about the library, but it has to be us seeking information from our community on what they want from their library. So that involves listening and relationship building. And who can do that better than each and every member of your staff? Every single person doesn't have to know how to use Publisher, or how to design a web page, or how to write an entire newsletter. But if you take those wonderful customer service skills that you've already developed with your staff and you direct them in a way that's going to affect this impression that you make, then you're going to have every single one of your staff members joining that marketing team. So if we start at the very beginning, I was trying to think of an image to use to represent the beginning. So this is my Big Bang image. Pardon me, my favorite show. I started thinking about marketing in terms of customer service when I read a book by a gentleman called Paco Underhill, and the name of the book is The Call of the Mall. And I understand that you're going to get a list of resources too, which you can refer, that will list this book. So The Call of the Mall talked about customer service from a customer perspective in a very unique way. And I'm applying that to how I encourage staff to develop one, and managers to develop their staff, not only because of the service element of customer service, but even more importantly, from the impression that that customer service builds. That impression is the marketing. So, if we start at the beginning, we have our friend here, the couch potato. He's sitting around home. He's got about a half an hour to kill, or maybe an hour, and he's got lots of options, right? Everybody's got lots of options these days. You can run your kids around to ballet and soccer and baseball. You can watch something on Netflix. You can go to the mall. You've got all kinds of options of what you can do with your time. So why in the world is this person going to think about going to the library? Well, hopefully because of the effective marketing that your staff does. And that's what's going to make a difference. So the first thing you have to do is get in his head. You have to have a brand that is associated with a pleasant, fun, useful, informative experience. And that's what we're all trying to market with everything we do. So let's talk about brands for just a second. I went to a marketing workshop once where somebody asked this large audience of librarians to list 3 shampoos. Almost half of the people there, and of course, you know, we have a wonderful diversity of ages, but those of a certain age, I should say, listed Prell shampoo. And when he asked them why, they said it was because of the Prell shampoo commercial, which showed a pearl being dropped into this bottle of green shampoo, and the pearl went down the shampoo very, very, very slowly. The point was that this was such a thick and rich shampoo. That commercial, that piece of marketing, made such an impression on people that they remembered it in this workshop a couple years ago, and that commercial hasn't aired since the 60s. That's what branding is. Branding is having an effect on people that lasts, something that really, really sticks in their mind. So then we started talking about branding when it comes to marketing. And the interesting thing was everyone in the audience was interested in helping to develop their library's brand, until what we learned was we don't develop our brand. We don't create our brand. Our brand exists because of the impressions that we have made in people's minds. A good test of this is to go back to your library and get some kind of a prize, a basket wrapped with books in it or something that's fun, and put a box next to it with some slips and ask people to write down 3 or 4 words that come to mind when they think of your library, and drop that slip in the box, and then you draw one and give away a prize. And of course, as we all know, that will encourage participation in this test. So then you take those slips out and you look at those words. Make yourself a tag cloud or find a way to look at the words that people used. Those words are your brand. You can't make it. You can't buy it. Your brand is what it is based on the impression that you give. And that is your strongest marketing. The interesting thing is, in one library I know that did this, the words were like comforting, comfortable, warm, friendly, wonderful words that told what the community saw that library's brand as. Whereas another library I'm familiar with didn't have quite as much good luck, and they ended up with loud, obnoxious, crowded, some really negative brands. So they really had some work to do in their marketing. But the fact of the matter is, as we teach people when we're teaching customer service, it's all about perception. And when we're doing marketing, we have to make sure that the perception or the brand or the image that we're trying to project is what we really want to stick in people's minds. And that's where you get everybody involved. So okay, we've got our couch potatoes sitting there with some time to kill, and perhaps we've done a good enough marketing job that there's a brand in his or her mind that makes him think about the library. So maybe the first thing they'll do is call. Think about marketing from this perspective. Just as Paco Underhill did when he talked about customer service, his example in Call of the Mall is what it's like for a customer to go from their house to the mall and back, and what all those feelings of customer service are. We're going to do that same thing with our couch potato in terms of marketing. So we've got somebody convinced they've got some time, they're going to call the library. So what happens when they call the library? Do they get a phone tree? Do they get a human being? A lot of libraries now, you know, we all jumped on the bandwagon of the phone tree when that technology was new, and now we're just sort of used to it because we always do it. But I have to tell you that my organization and several other libraries I know of have recently decided to forego the phone tree. What they've done is they've changed the structure of the automated system so that instead of picking up after 2 rings, it picks up after 3 or 4 rings. So it's still there. It's still a backup for when you're busy. But in the meantime, the staff has been encouraged to answer the phone on that first ring or maybe the second ring or the third ring, because those people who are calling in are having an opportunity to hear a friendly voice, to hear a human being, to get some real help without that frustrating sense of moving around through, press this, press that, getting voicemail. This might be the first opportunity you have to market your library as a friendly, community-centered place by having somebody just pick up the phone and say good morning. We talk a lot about phone etiquette and phone training, and we've all heard the same kinds of tips. Smile when you're on the telephone. You can hear that over the phone. Make sure that you don't blind transfer and just dump somebody into some voicemail void. Have those basic customer service skills ready. And use your phone system, if you have the option, to market your events. How many, of course this is rhetorical unfortunately since we're not face-to-face, but I'm sure many of you have had the experience where you call somebody and you're on hold and there's just dead air. You're not even sure if you're still connected. And you've also had the experience where you've called somebody and when they put you on hold, you hear somebody who has a very lively, friendly voice telling you about upcoming programs. That's an excellent opportunity for marketing at this very first point of contact with your customer. And you'd probably be surprised if you tried asking your staff to find somebody on your staff who's got one of those great radio voices, somebody who might like doing the recording and making it something that's really, really appealing. So that's just something to think about because that's your first opportunity. And remember, if they can get a real human being to answer the phone, there's nothing better than having somebody with really good manners, somebody who's happy to have the job, somebody who's not going to be making that negative impression that could turn somebody off. We don't have to name any names here, but you have heard the same kinds of horrible customer service over the telephone that many of us have been guilty of. Oh, you want somebody back in reference? 2 people called in sick. They're really slow back there. Can you call back later? Or, no, I don't think we have that. No, sorry. Or, well, I don't know why they're not answering. I can never get them to answer the phone. All of those terrible examples. It's worth it from a marketing perspective to take some time, maybe at a staff day or any opportunity you have, to teach somebody some of the golden rules of phone etiquette. Instead of, hold on, may I put you on hold? Would you mind waiting for a moment? Would you mind if I gave you his voicemail or her voicemail? Those very simple opportunities for training our staff are sometimes the best opportunity we have to get back that customer who might be starting for the very first time to try to reach our library. Whatever we've done, whatever effort we've made, whatever money we've spent to get into their head, to make them think of the library when they've got some time to kill, we don't want to waste that right now by having them call us and either get some kind of a mechanical voice or somebody who obviously wishes they didn't have to be answering the phone right now because they have something else more important to do. A lot of times customer service training at this point in libraries is just refresher training, but a lot of times it isn't. Stop and think about how many new staff members you've had join your library since the last time you talked about customer service over the telephone. And maybe it's time and it's worth it to make that investment in a little bit more training for this valuable marketing opportunity. The next thing that you want to think about as we're going through this whole process of being the customer and thinking about how the library is marketed is, what does your library look like once this person has decided to call you, found out from the telephone call what they needed to know, your hours or what kind of services you have, and they decide they're going to come and visit? Can they find your library easily? Are there signs on the street? Are there signs in your parking lot? Is your parking lot safe and comfortable looking place for them to stop? Just a couple weeks ago, I did a community focus group for a library that's going through strategic planning. And I was surprised to hear that there were several comments about the fact that the parking lot was dangerous. They said there weren't signs indicating which one-way pathways were actually one way, and there weren't speed bumps, and cars were going too fast, and there were blind spots. And that was something that was actually keeping them away. So think about when you pull into that parking lot, what does it really look like? How well is it marked? Are there handicapped accessible spots? Do you ask your staff to park way in the back corner so that the customers can have the shortest walk? And then when you get out of your car, walk all around your building and look at what the marketing message tells people who are visiting. Are the sidewalks cracked? Are there cigarette butts and broken bottles all over the place? Or are the bushes trimmed and the place looks very livable and well cared for and comfortable, the kind of place that we would all want to visit? Make sure that your staff members who are responsible for keeping up the facilities and the outside landscaping of your library realize that there's an element of their job that's actually marketing. Because if I pull up to a library that looks cramped and crowded and dirty and ill-kept and unsafe, I'm probably not even going to stop my car and get out. So that's one element that we very frequently don't think about, that we have to pay a little bit more attention to, because we're still trying to get that person out of their car and into the library. So what happens when they get out of their car? Walking up to the door, have you walked up to your door lately and just stopped to look at what it looks like? If you've been to any continuing education training of late, I would be willing to bet you've probably heard an awful lot of talk about signage. But we have an awful lot of negative signage in our libraries. We are, by nature, kind of a controlling industry. We like to make sure that rules are in place and books are cataloged according to their call number and everything is just so. So we have a tendency to put up a lot of negative marketing. There's always people on your staff who are more than happy to lend their creativity or their ideas when you have an exercise that you offer them, maybe at a staff meeting, where you say, why don't you all go around, look at all the signs in the library and see if you can find a nicer or a more appreciative way to say things. And then you go about the process of really correcting some of your signage. I worked in a library that had a second story, and people were allowed to come in before we opened, but there was a chain across the stairs. And the chain had a sign hanging from it that said, "Do not enter before 9 a.m. And when we did the exercise with a few staff members that I just mentioned, we changed that sign to say, "Won't be long now. We'll be happy to welcome you at 9 a.m. Now that's the kind of marketing that's also not something that's been on our radar. We haven't really given a lot of thought to what message we're sending to people that are looking at the different signs we have. I actually went to a library recently that had a sign that said "No loitering." And I didn't understand that at all, because I thought that's why you went to the library, was to loiter. So one example of a way you can resolve this is, as I mentioned, make it a contest. Ask your staff to come up with nicer ways to say things, or maybe suggestions to just remove some signs that say don't do this and don't do that, and see if maybe you can get a little bit more positive marketing out of your signage than you had with your previous signs. Whether or not your visitors see signs, with any luck at all, they're going to see a person. Now, a lot of libraries can't have a welcome desk because they don't have enough staff to staff it. And I'll tell you, there's nothing worse than a welcome desk that has nobody standing at it. But if there's a possibility that someone can be moved out from an office to do their work at a welcome desk, or perhaps you can establish a welcome desk that you can rotate staff through, this is a gold mine in marketing opportunities. There was a library where I worked that had a welcome desk that everybody shared 1 hour a week at this desk. There was no computer. They weren't allowed to bring a truck of books to sort or any other work to do. Their job was to market to people coming in and to sell that impression of truly welcoming people into the library. So if somebody on the second floor was expecting someone for a meeting at 10 o'clock, they'd call down a little before 10 and they'd tell the person at the welcome desk, "Sally Smith is going to be here to meet with me." So then when Sally Smith walked in the door at 10 to 10 and was kind of looking around, the welcome desk person would say, "You must be Sally Smith. They're waiting for you upstairs. It's right this way." I can't tell you how many people commented to me by the time they got to my office, "I've been greeted by 5 or 6 people since I got here, and that person down at the front door knew who I was as soon as I walked in." That's the kind of marketing that money can't buy. That says that we care about you, we can manage our workload, and we are busy running a library, but we care enough about our customers and the impression that this library makes on them to actually put somebody out there to say hello to you. I have to tell you that there was a tangent benefit to this welcome desk that I don't think anybody who planned it had even foreseen, and that was by having a lot of different people share time covering this desk. They were helping to really strengthen the team building ties, because when we had, for example, a facilities person at the desk, that person got a question about story hours for babies. He didn't even know if we had story hours for babies, but he said, "I'll be happy to check for you," and he called the children's department and he had answered the question and directed the person to that department, and afterwards said to some of his coworkers, "I'd never even been over to that children's department. I had no idea what they did." And there were literally hundreds of examples of things that happened like that. So this not only served to be a fabulous marketing opportunity for the library, but from a staff team building perspective, it really helped to build an understanding and a respect for coworkers once everybody was learning and finding out a little bit more about what their coworkers actually did. Okay, so your couch potato has decided to call you, decided to come in, liked your parking lot enough to stay and come through your welcoming signs at the door, and hopefully they've been greeted by someone. But whether they have or whether they haven't, they're then going to be lost in the world of library arrangement. Now, I found an example here that went with a commercial store, but I think you know what I mean. Try going into your library through a door that you don't normally use. Or better yet, see if you can get a friend or a relative to visit your library with you, and just step inside the door and look around, and maybe you'll be able to see that from the perspective of your customer, there's an awful lot of confusing stuff about libraries. You know, it's easy for us to say, "Oh, where are the cookbooks? Oh, they're right there around the corner behind the adult new readers over by those books on tape." Because we know what adult new readers look like, and we know what books on tape look like, but our customers don't. So another one of the really great things we can do from a marketing perspective, and quite often you can get facilities or even IT people to help create these, is to put a few maps around here or there that show where you are. I know when I'm in an airport or when I'm in a big shopping mall, these things come in very, very handy. But it's a great opportunity not only to help people feel like their experience at the library is being improved, but it's also a great opportunity to market all the things you have in the library. If you have somebody who comes in every single week and goes right over to the parenting books, they might not even know that you have puppets or that you have cake pans or any of the other number of things that your library might have. But if you have some professional people on your staff help to design some really attractive and compelling maps, not only are you going to help those customers see where they are and where they're going, but you're also going to be able to show them all the things about your library that they might not know are there. And when you do this and when you make these maps, again, think about the wording that you're using, just like you did when you were making up your signage. One example of a library that was putting out an information desk was really interesting because for quite a long time the staff debated about the sign that they were going to hang over the desk. They couldn't decide if it was going to say reference or information, and what they finally decided was that they would hang a question mark. So they just had a sign made that was a giant question mark, and it hung over the desk. And people felt very comfortable. They didn't feel foolish. As we all know, library customers don't want to feel stupid. They want to feel like they can maneuver through this pretty much on their own, maybe with a little bit of friendly help. But keeping things that simple is a way of making people's experience be a little bit better and overall marketing a much more positive impression of the library itself. So once they've seen that map and they're on their way to go and find whatever department or room they're looking for, what are they going to walk past? This is another opportunity to give your staff who might have kind of the rote or the mundane tasks to do a chance to really be creative. And my example of this was working with the circulation staff in setting up displays. This is a great example of a creative display. Play on words. Read any good books lately? The books can be all red. They can be all yellow. You can go pull off all your small books and do a small display. Anything that's really creative and eye-catching. And when I worked with the circulation staff, you know, circulation staff is one of the hardest working staff departments in a library, I believe. They're checking in delivery every day. They're checking in book drop. They're doing all the things they do. It's kind of like dishes and laundry. I mean, the work just never ends. But these are the people who know what the customers are interested in. They know what intrigues the customers and what catches their eye because they see it. They interact with them every day and they see what's returned. And a lot of them would really jump at the chance to have an opportunity to put a little bit of creativity into their job by managing a couple areas of display. You know, those smash and grab customer displays maybe that you put right by the checkout machines or the checkout desk, just like the grocery stores do with putting all the candy by the checkout. So that's what the last things the kids want, and the mom's ready to go and she's exhausted and she doesn't want to fight, so she buys them. Same idea. But give some thought to putting out displays that really wow your customers. Not only fun displays like this, but very, very topical displays. Years ago, we learned about the power wall display that was changed to reflect all of the current events that were going on. And a lot of us do this anyway, but maybe not as often or as frequently or in as many places as we possibly could. It's always a good idea to put a big book display around any flyers that you might have advertising an upcoming program, for example. Or if it's time for the Summer Olympics, putting out a huge Summer Olympics display that's got some three-dimensional things in front of it, like a pole vault, or, you know, maybe not a pole vault, that might be a little dangerous, but you know what I mean. These displays, sometimes we think of as having the sole purpose of increasing attendance, but really what they're doing is marketing. And again, that tangential benefit of giving staff members who might not always have the opportunity to be creative, but they have those skills, giving them an opportunity to be very creative as well. So your customer, or your potato, is about halfway through their marketing experience with your library, and I just want to take a break here for a minute and see, Janet, if you have any comments or reactions or questions that have come in.
We do have some comments and questions, so we're getting a lot of feedback here, which is great. One of the things that you mentioned in the beginning was that part of marketing was getting customer feedback. What are some of the best ways that you have found to get feedback from your customers?
Well, of course, there's a lot of different ways to do that, and a lot of different staff members who can be involved. There is the, you know, kind of the traditional focus group, of course, which is usually only done at times of strategic planning or other major undertakings. But one of the best ways I've found to get staff involved is to make sure that staff are trained and supported and encouraged to be responsive to customers. It's so easy for our staff, as conscientious as they are, to just sort of stay focused on their task. But if a director or the leaders of departments really instill not only the expectation but the appreciation of relationship building and interaction with the customers, then you've got a goldmine of people who are out on your floor every day, seeing those customers face to face and having a chance to really talk to them and see if they're getting what they want. You know, did you find what you wanted today is the basic starting point. What else could we have on this subject that might interest you? Or where else have you gone lately? Oh, we went to the museum and saw the new show. Oh, would you be interested in a library program around something like that? It really just takes encouragement. and being open with your staff and explaining to them what the incredible value it is of this sort of informal information collection that goes into marketing. But that's quite often the one half of marketing that is the most overlooked, is that it is supposed to be a two-way street. The other thing is have suggestion slips that are out all the time. I mean, you can buy holders and you can put little packages of suggestion slips and pencils at the end of stack ranges, at the ends of desks, next to computers. How can we improve? What else can we do for you? And have somebody actually collecting and responding to that feedback. So whether you're doing it annually or biannually or what formally, or whether you're getting your staff to do it every single day, that's the kind of feedback you need so that you can develop and then market things that truly match what your customers and your community are looking for.
Awesome advice, Kathy. That's very helpful. I'm just going to have one more question right now, and then we'll see how many we can get in at the end once you get through the rest of your presentation. But we have a question on how you market to underserved populations, like young professionals, possibly homeschoolers who maybe don't normally use the library.
Yeah, I think a lot of libraries now are really ramping up their outreach, and they're really realizing that the true mission of the library cannot be accomplished within four walls of the library building. So I would have to say that the best way you can do that is to go where the people are. I'll talk about online in a minute, and that's what we learn about working in the virtual world. We have to go where people are. So if you really want to reach young parents, then you should have a table set up at kindergarten sign-up day. And if you want to reach young professionals, then you should have a table set up at whatever professional event is going on in your community, or maybe even at alumni association meetings for your colleges. But you have to figure out where these underserved populations go, and go there and find ways to connect with them, hear what they need, market things that you're doing, and build those relationships. And I really think that that's one of the most successful ways you can do it.
Perfect. I think we'll go ahead and move on then if you're ready.
Okay.
And
Sure.
We'll get the rest of the questions at the end. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the next thing to remember when you're talking about this impression that you're making is the customer service portion of it. And again, we've had customer service training in libraries for 30 years, but sometimes I think we forget about turnover and about the need for new and updated customer service training, and the need for reinforcement and refreshing the basic concepts that people have. But it's very important to not do that. It's very important, I think, to build this kind of a refresher in at least annually for your staff. Because after all you've gone through to get this person to your library and all the impressions you've worked on sharing, you have to make sure that while they're walking past these displays and they're going towards their material, they're not running into negative customer service interactions. If they see them or they hear about them, again, that's quite often that lowest common denominator that's going to keep them away. So marketing has to, I think, embody an element of very high-level customer service expectations in order to make sure that all the other work that you're all doing isn't for naught. Remember too, when you're doing your signage in your stacks, which of course we're doing more and more marketing in the stacks, both through signage, through displays, and with human beings who are maybe reference librarians who don't sit behind a desk anymore, but they walk around. They're not just walking around to shelve or to weed, but they're trying to make that eye contact and smile and let me know if you need any help. But the stuff that we're putting on our shelves that people are going to want to find, we have to put in English. We have to make sure that we're creating that impression of, I can understand this place and I can find what I want. One of my favorite libraries did away with using Dewey for all of their nonfiction. This was a very small community library, and I understand that every library can't do this. But in this small community library, they created neighborhoods where they kind of wrapped some shelving around a few comfortable chairs, and they put up some signs that advertised neighborhoods. So, for example, when they got to a neighborhood that had to do with food and food ideas, They included things from nutrition, from cooking, you know, the 300s, the 600s, and they put them all together. It's also easy to do that if you create, for example, a home and garden. You know, you can have everything from gardening to soil study all pulled together. And sometimes it's nice, you know, you don't have to jump off the deep end with these changes and change everything. You can just pull one neighborhood together, maybe around the front of your library, that pulls out several sections or portions of several sections of your nonfiction, just to kind of try it out and see if it's the kind of thing that gets that collection out there. You know, we struggled for years with how can we market our collection that isn't circulating, and this I think has proven to be a really successful way to try it. And finally, the people who are there and going through all of this are going to want to find that thing that they're looking for. Making sure that you have a collection that's truly developed that reflects your community is one of the best ways you can create the impression in someone's mind that's going to bring them back. So if you have access to your statistical programs or any other method that you want to use to truly analyze your collection, if you're one of those libraries that's fortunate enough to be in an environment where you've got some really great interloan going on, then you don't have to keep all of that dead weight collection anymore. Keep and develop and market the portions of your collection that your community needs, and the other things that they want that you can get for them on interloan. That's the way you should be getting that. You're going to free up personnel time, you're going to free up money, and you're most importantly going to free up space that you might use for an expanded children's learning area or expanded computer room or just a kind of a living room place to stop. One more thing about this, our friend walking through the library. One of the things that we have a tendency to do is to put all of our programs and classes away in the corner in the meeting room. But sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it's exciting to bring those programs out or bring portions of them out so people can see and get the impression that this is a gathering place and this is a place for other kinds of interaction besides just picking up a book. If you have a zombie prom, for example, have them do a parade through your library just so people can see what's going on. Or if you're having a computer class, maybe it's time to bring those computers out and set them out in the lobby. Or do you have a meeting room with a glassed-in window where people can actually see what's happening? I saw a library working on a renovation once, and they put their computer lab right beside the lobby with a glass wall. And it was the best way to market to everybody else who was walking around. We have computer classes. We're here to help you learn to use the computer. You know, when they brought those first computers in at the end of the 1980s, we used to be told, this is not your job to understand this computer. All we're doing is turning it on, and people want to use it, they have to come in and know how. But of course, that has completely changed now, and we find ourselves at a time when we need to make sure that we can find a way to tell the community they can turn to us for the help that they need. More and more communities are doing away with their adult education, and we have to find a way to show that we're there to fill that gap, and what better way to market that than to let people see what we're doing. Another thing that's become a big part of our job now that people don't necessarily know about is that we are there to engage the community as well. So we're hosting all kinds of discussions, or we have a movie on perhaps a sensitive topic and we lead a discussion afterwards or bring in experts to talk about it. That's another thing that you can not be afraid to have out in the open where people can see that it's going on. I know a lot of times there are noise concerns, and of course all of your libraries are different and you have to make this work as best you can. But I guess the bottom line point that I'm trying to make is to make sure that people see what's happening. It's the best way to get a message across, better than any number of newsletters or flyers you can send out. So if you have that opportunity, get people out there and have others see what they're doing. Again, this is an opportunity also for people who are on your staff, who teach classes or who lead programs, to find creative ways to build those into your library instead of tucking them out in a corner. Sometimes when all of these ideas get presented to directors or managers, they're sort of overwhelmed with how could we ever make all of this happen. And I can tell you from personal experience that the best way I've seen to make some of these ideas come to life is to turn them over to your staff. Explain to your staff that these are ways that you can market and improve and impact that impression that you're giving to people, and ask for their ideas, ask for their creativity, maybe give them a little bit more flexibility to make contributions that can turn into some of these changes. And then again, as I mentioned earlier briefly, we have to go where the people are. And in many cases now, that is online. Now there's lots of ways to learn about how to effectively use our social media, and this certainly isn't the time or the place to go into all of them, but I would suggest that the traditional methods that we all used when we had no choice but to kind of jump on the bandwagon, they've evolved quite a bit. We need to be inviting people to participate in our social media. We can't use it just as a posting to announce something, but we have to engage people. I know a library that has, I don't know what evening a week it is, but like Wednesday evening book talk. And they invite people onto Facebook from, I don't know, 7 to 8 o'clock just to talk about what they're reading. And they get hundreds of people who log on at that time. Now, while those people are there, they're seeing other things on Facebook, or they're just changing their overall impression of the library. And it's a wonderful way to engage people. And again, there's a lot of staff members who can lead this kind of a discussion without a master's in library science, or maybe even without reference librarian after their name. Not only does it help to engage many members of your staff in this kind of an exercise, but it's a wonderfully motivating thing for staff members who are interested in doing something like this, just to change their job a little bit and to add that extra element of creativity. And then, of course, the bottom line is that you are communicating to them that they are becoming part of your whole marketing process by doing so. So it's a great sense of accomplishment. The other book that I'm going to recommend that you read is called The Experience Economy, and that's also going to be in your resources. But a lot of what I'm talking about now has to do with some of the really basic principles of this book, and the example that you'll hear is about Starbucks. And just in brief, the point being made is that years ago, if someone wanted a cup of coffee, they just went out and got some coffee and made themselves a cup of coffee for about 5 cents. And then stores like McDonald's came along, and people thought, well, I'll go through the drive-thru and I'll have a cup of coffee. And that changed the experience for them because they didn't have to make it anymore. Now people pay $4 a cup at some of these other Starbucks-type establishments. Not because it's different, it's still a cup of coffee. It might have a little bit of caramel in it. But the point is that the experience they're having is that they're sitting in these comfortable spaces with the open brick walls and the ferns, and they're plugging in their laptop. And that's where our society has come. The experience economy is all about the experience that people have in with an organization or in a certain place, and that's by and large what brings them coming back to that place. It isn't just, I'm going to go pick up my book. It's that whole experience, that whole impression that's made from everybody on your staff, from your landscapers who keep the outside inviting, to the people who do all of the displays and the signage and the ideas and the classes and the book talks and everything that you do. That's what contributes to the experience people have at your library. That's what builds that impression that'll stick with them, like that pearl falling down the bottle of shampoo. And hopefully, that's what's going to make them think next time they've got some time to kill that they're going to go back to the library. So with that, I'd like to have some time left over here to answer some more questions or hear some of the ideas or feedback that you've had to some of these ideas.
Okay, great, Catherine. Great information there. One of the questions we have is that a lot of these ideas seem like they're good ideas for larger libraries. So if there's a very small library with, say, 4 staff members or less, how can they accomplish some of these things?
Well, that's a really good question, and I know that there's an awful lot of small libraries out there. And I guess the first thing I would suggest is that, at least in my mind, this is a great opportunity to begin the process of breaking down the walls of the old job description. You know, at the risk of sounding like I'm doing a commercial, like you said, Janet, I did just publish a book called Build a Great Team, 1 Year to Success. And one of the really strong basic points I make is that for many years when I worked in libraries, we didn't have a team, we had a staff. And everybody had their job to do, and there wasn't any overlap. I can remember when the children's librarian was on vacation and the children's books that had been returned were just falling off the shelf, and the page didn't put them away because the children's librarian was on vacation and hadn't told her to. I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but we were very much operating in silos. And now, given the economic changes and the technological changes that have resulted in new organizations, jobs not being filled, people cross-training and things, we have to work as a team. So I guess my suggestion to small libraries would be to have a kind of a brainstorming session with your entire staff that looks at lots of different opportunities to do these kinds of things and maybe prioritize the top 1 or 2 or 3, just taking baby steps, not trying to do everything at once, but the top 1 or 2 or 3 things that might really make an impact or at least be a good test run, and then talk about who has the skills to contribute to this and who can do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Another thing that I suggest is that you take a really good look at what your staff does, because we have gone through this massive change in staff structure and organization, but in response to that, we all haven't really taken a look at the things we do, and I would venture to guess that in most libraries there's a lot of work that we do that's duplication work, or that's excessive, or that I don't know why we do it this way, but we've always done it. We always make copies of all of our late notices before we send them, and there's lots of stuff in there, lots of opportunities to just cut out a few things and free up some more time. But more than anything, it's the direction provided by the leadership in the library to get the staff together as a team and address some of these things that are going to really make a difference for the library and the community.
Great information there. Okay, here's another one that goes in a little bit of a different direction. So we have a lot of libraries out there that are maybe renovating their libraries, expanding. Some of them are very small libraries that are maybe able to now double their space. What suggestions do you have on how to encourage the community to come in and explore what's new in those libraries?
You mean are they saying once a library's been renovated, getting people to come in and see the new library? Is that what they're asking?
Right. Some of the best ways to do that.
Food. Well, that would be one of my suggestions. I guess I would, one of the best ways to get adults into a library is to invite kids to do something, because if you invite children to do something, they bring their parents. Another way is to really emphasize just one thing that's really, really new. For example, I know about a library that renovated, and they ended up with a new meeting room that was beautiful, and they'd always had a rule that you can't use a meeting room for a party. Nobody could remember why, but that was always the rule. Can't use a meeting room for a party. But they realized they now had this beautiful meeting room with a kitchen. There were no places in this community to have a party, so they passed a new rule that you could use a meeting room for a party, and not only that, but they charged, I don't know, $20 an hour or something minor. And sure, there were lots of potential problems, and it might get dirty and things like that, which were all worked out in time. Not only did that library find a really steady revenue source, but they were bringing people in for baby showers and wedding showers and all kinds of family reunions and things, and they were hearing people say, what a great place. You know, I've lived in this community 20 years. I don't even think I've ever been in this library. So if you can, look for opportunities to do things that you haven't done before, even if you just pick one, and you're going to get people to come into that building who have never been there before. The other thing to do is invite the media in to do something. If you invite the local newspaper reporter in to be librarian for a day, you're going to get written up in the newspaper. That's going to be much more effective than if you just send an invitation to come to some library program. So if you want to get media attention, invite the media to come in and be part of the library for a day, and that's going to help you to get your word out through them. But I think the most effective thing is to just try to pick one thing to focus on that's brand new. Maybe you're issuing passports and you've never done that before. And take advantage of having those people in your library. One of the things that this library did was every time there was a day scheduled when a party was going to take place, they made sure that they had books and our famous flyers and different things advertising library programs on every seat in the meeting room so that people coming in were seeing things about the library. But that was a very successful way of reaching people they hadn't reached before. And then again, my last suggestion would be to go where the people are. If you're not getting them in to see your library, they must be going somewhere. So go where the people are. Even if you set up a table at a grocery store and advertise your cookbooks, just to get their attention and to be able to talk to them and tell them what other things you have and get them to come in.
Great suggestions. Okay, we do have some academic librarians online, and this is the last question I'm going to take. Any other questions will be answered in a Q&A log that I'll discuss in just a moment as we're wrapping up. But we have some academic librarians that are wondering if you have any suggestions for what they could do to promote their libraries. They're feeling that some of these suggestions might be geared towards public librarians.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I will be honest and say I am not an academic librarian, but I do teach at Kent State, and I do know some of the issues that are being discussed. And in essence, really, some of the same answers apply. So, for example, if it's finals week and you're not getting a lot of students in to use your resources in your library, where are they going? Where do they study, and can you go there? Is it possible to have 24-hour 24/7 hours during finals week? I mean, what is it that really impacts the life of the students, and how can you address that? You know, in the Turning the Page program that the Public Library Association offered, there was one really, really good lesson, one of the segments, that was called Problem Solution Opportunity. And what we were encouraged to do is think of the problems that our customers are facing. What would the solution to that problem be, and then use that solution as an opportunity for the library to step into their life and make a real difference. So I guess that would be primarily what I would be thinking about, is try to find things that are truly affecting or problems or challenges that the students are facing, and what would the solution be, and then is there an opportunity in that solution for the library to be involved, whether it's going out to find the students where they are, or whatever options that you can come up with that can really make a difference. Because, I mean, that's what we have to do, is we have to convince our customers, whether they're public library customers or academic library customers, that we're relevant, that we matter, and we can affect the things in their lives that they're facing.
Great advice. We are going to need to wrap up now, so thank you, Kathy, for your insight and for sharing some of the tips on what we can do to increase the value of our libraries. We hope that you were able to take away a few new ideas to try. There was some great discussion today, and we appreciate all of you sharing your time with us. You will see a survey at the end of the webinar to let us know how we did. Please take a few moments to fill this out. We would love your feedback so that we can make these sessions even better in the future. Feel free to comment on other topics that you would like more information on, and other speakers that you might like to hear from, so that we can consider building some of these things into our schedule in the future. We've received great feedback from our previous webinars, and we're hoping to use that in our future programming. Tomorrow you will receive a follow-up to this presentation that will include a link to this webcast. So if you missed something or just want to review, you can go back and refresh yourself on some of these topics, or you can share with some of your colleagues. Next week you'll be receiving a second email that will include resources such as the slides, a Q&A log, some of the resources that Kathy discussed, and answers to the questions that came up today. Again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you again. We will have a little break in our webinar schedule for the summer months, and Kathy will be back kicking off our fall webinars on September 19th. She will be presenting Anyone Can Write a Grant, and this program focuses on how you can pool the skills of your staff with a little extra money for your library. So some of you had questions about grants and that type of thing today, so hopefully you'll tune in and find out some of that information through that particular opportunity. We will be sending out emails announcing those webinars in the months to come, and we hope that you'll consider joining us for some of these future events. So again, glad you joined us and hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.